Mueon, VATN, GridAero, SMAC, Phenix tailings, portal space, and most recently Firestorm.
The focus of Geodesic and the Geodesic platform as a whole. And it really is to invest in these companies, building that bridge between the US and Japan. For those companies, we really thought hard about what are the various technology capabilities that are missing, both on the commercial side, but then also on the government and defense and national security side. And we looked for companies that were sort of filling those gaps in both land, sea, air, and across the different domains. This may sound science fiction. Space is becoming more contested.
Hey, Rafe, welcome to the Dome podcast. You're in Foster City now, right?
Yep, I am. Hey, Marcus. Nice to see you.
Cool. Yeah, good to see you. Greetings from Tokyo. We're here with Rafe Gaspar-Asaoka, one of the partners with Geodesic Capital's Alliance Fund, the early stage DeepTech dual use fund that we launched last August. So I guess it's been about 10 months. Since launching formally in August, you guys have made 7 investments so far, right? Let me see if I can get this right. Mueon, VATN, GridAero, SMAC, Phenix tailings, portal space, and most recently Firestorm. Right? Is that right? Okay. And those cover data centers, maritime, supply chain, rare earth, space, and defense. So we're definitely looking forward to kind of digging in a little bit deeper to the portfolio companies a little bit later. And I guess the first thing that the audience should know about Rafe and me is that we're both from Hawaii. We both went to the same high school, Iolani, and we both played water polo. So there's a little bit of an age difference. We'll say roughly 2 decades.
Very much a small world. And I didn't know that I was following in your footsteps, but I am very excited to be.
Here you are. So Rafe, thanks. You sent us some pictures actually, so we can kind of like get a good sense for, I guess, who you are as a person, but also your connection to Japan. As everybody knows, Geodesic was originally founded to be a bridge, a technology bridge, an investing bridge, a business bridge between the technology industry in the US and Japan. And you have a lot of really interesting ties. So the first picture
is my great-grandfather, who is born in Aichi Prefecture in Japan, and then studied in Kyoto, and then came to Hawaii back in 1924 to the Big Island of Hawaii in order to be a part of the Shingon Temple there on the Big Island. And so he was the Buddhist priest.
My grandfather was born in Kagoshima and moved to Hawaii in 1915, so a little bit before your great-grandfather, but sounds like a similar background.
But yeah, Japan, I think my first international trip actually out of Hawaii when I was a kid was to Japan. And as you mentioned, Marcus, I played water polo in high school and college, but when I was growing up, my first sport that I did was swimming. And so I was part of a couple of swim exchanges where I went out to Japan. I stayed in Chiba. I trained with the homestay family, and I got to experience Japan. And then vice versa, we had some people stay with us. My wife and I, she's also Japanese American, but we got married in 2018, about 6 years ago now, and we did our honeymoon in Japan, both deciding that was the place we wanted to go. So this is a picture from that.
Cool. Yeah, most Japanese like to do their honeymoon in Hawaii, but now Hawaii people are doing their honeymoons in Japan. You were part of the USJC Emerging Leadership Program.
Yeah, so during 2020, I started to think about ways that I could incorporate Japan just from personal into more of a professional side of my life. And so I joined US Japan Council And specifically, there was a leadership program called Emerging Leaders Program that I joined in 2020. And so I was part of that cohort. We got to, I got to meet a lot of the business and professional side of Japan. And then this was, if you remember, during COVID. And so there wasn't much travel for a couple of years. But in 2022, I went out with a group of 50 of us called ELP 50, and we went out to Tokyo. It was actually organized by the CEO at the time, who was Suzanne Basala, who's now my partner at Geodesic on the Alliance Fund. But she was the CEO that helped to organize this trek out for a bunch of young Japanese Americans. And so we went out to Tokyo. I got to visit NEC's office. I visited Mitsui's office. I got to go and visit Fast Retailing and hear Yanai-san speak. And so it was a really great experience, and then culminated in my first conference for US Japan Council, or USJC conference, in 2022 as well.
That's cool. So how is your Japanese?
少し話せます。でも、
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I've been here for 24 years, and it's still a work in progress. So don't stop.
When I was growing up in middle school and high school, I took Japanese as a foreign language. And so I studied Japanese kind of around the time I joined ELP for USJC. This was during COVID. I wanted to sort of reconnect and relearn Japanese. And so I started taking Japanese lessons with a sensei over Zoom in 2022. So this is a picture of my sensei meeting in person.
Oh, that's cool. I know, before Geodesic, you had a long career, and it didn't start with venture capital, but for the 10 years prior to Geodesic, you were at Canaan, a storied VC firm in the Valley.
I've always been more technical. So I studied electrical engineering in undergrad, and then I went to get a graduate degree also in electrical engineering at Stanford. And so that's what originally brought me up to the Bay Area back in 2012. After studying engineering, I knew that I wanted to be involved in technology somehow, but I kind of wanted a slightly broader view than just being focused on being an engineer. And so one of the first jobs I did was actually I went into strategy consulting as a way to sort of bridge engineering and the technical aspects of it with more of the business side in consulting and learning how to think about business models and think about how to grow companies from a technology standpoint. And then I joined Canaan Partners in 2015. And that was my first foray into venture capital. I joined there as, a junior investor on the team. And at the time, if you take yourself back to 2015, the stuff that Alliance Fund that we will talk about, that we're investing in, that really wasn't a core focus of startups or venture capital investing in Silicon Valley. So all these areas of space and robotics and maritime and energy, the in vogue themes at the time there were on-demand economy, sharing economy. It was cloud software,
mobile,
the movement from on-prem to in the cloud. It was all themes like that. And I had the fortunate, I think I was very lucky, where over my 10-year time at Canaan, I got to sort of grow as the deep tech ecosystem grew as well. And so, if you take yourself back to 2015 when I started venture, that was the year that SpaceX had launched the first time they had got into orbit with their rocket, and then were able to bring that launcher back down. And since then they've done hundreds of that launch since, and they're about to go public later this year. Waymo, if you remember, was Project Chauffeur in Google X's sort of moonshot organization, and it wasn't yet a real viable business. And like the thing that we're all talking about today, AI, like OpenAI wasn't even formed yet, uh,
Mm-hmm.
even as the nonprofit. So like the time
Yeah.
that that era was it was such it was so different than it is now. And
Uh-huh.
I think I was very fortunate to be in this period of venture in Silicon Valley over the last decade and get to see that growth and see the changes that have happened, primarily around all this deep tech.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Because you're right. I mean, that was kind of like the heyday of software as a service.
Yeah, even at Canaan, right? When I first
Yeah.
started, we had done at that point one space deal in a company called Skybox that had
Uh-huh.
exited to Google, and so we
Uh-huh.
had a little exposure, but not that much.
Yeah.
And it started as a tiny focus area within the broader portfolio, and then
Yeah.
over that 10-year time frame, it really grew into a core investment strategy. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that really models how Silicon Valley as a whole has really seen deep tech start as this, side hustle every now and then people will do some investments in that category to now you're
Yeah.
seeing funds like the Alliance Fund that are fully
Yeah.
dedicated and focused to deep tech. One of the board dinners that I
Yeah.
attended in a company called Kepler Space.
Uh-huh.
Kepler's building communication satellites up in space, Canadian-based business.
Mm-hmm.
I invested in the Series B of that company when I was at Canaan back in 2022. Um, and this is a picture of me with John Cowgill, who's at Costanoa, another VC firm. They led the Series A, and then Mina, the CEO, is on the right. And so this is a picture of me and John sharing the surf and turf dinner together.
Nice. Yeah. Kepler. Now that you mentioned them, uh, really doing some amazing things. Are they public now, or are they still private?
So Kepler is still a private company today. They've gone
Mm-hmm.
on to raise a few more funding rounds, capitalize
Yeah.
the company. The big news for that company is they had just launched their first tranche of about 10 satellites up in space
Oh,
that's
nice.
providing the first optical relay network, communications network up in space for satellites. So there's a theme that I like to eat, but this is another picture of me at a dinner table with a company called Edge Impulse. This is
Mm-hmm.
the closing dinner after the company got acquired by Qualcomm. So I had
Oh,
led the
nice.
Series A in that investment back in 2022,
Uh-huh.
also, um, and got to work with them, raise additional funding, and then go through the process of building a company and then ultimately getting acquired by Qualcomm for their really new and novel technology. This
Uh-huh.
company is really cool. They're a machine learning company that's focused on building tiny machine learning models at the edge. And so there are so many wearable devices out there today, like a Fitbit or Aura Ring, and so this company was built for developers to go and develop and deploy and optimize machine learning models that are optimized for those smaller compute devices at the edge. And so, really interesting business. Got acquired by Qualcomm, and I was just grateful to be part of that journey from Series A up until the acquisition.
Was that the first company that you kind of went full circle from investment all the way to exit?
Yeah, that was really my first experience of a company that
Yeah.
I had led and sat on the board
Yeah.
of. Really go through
Uh-huh.
that full life cycle.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for sharing that with us. As you probably know, Rafe, we out of the growth fund, we invested in a company called Exene, actually out of Rome, Italy. They do IoT security. So similarly, kind of riding that same IoT wave, which is really taking off in a big way now. So super interesting that you were involved in that so early. Next picture here with you and some folks on the beach.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is actually a picture, and this kind of helps bridge a little bit of the story of me coming to Geodesic. But
Yep.
back during COVID, also in 2020, I had done a fellowship called Kauffman Fellows, which is a
Yep.
venture-focused fellowship for a couple of years. You get
Yep.
to build relationships and networks with about 50 or 60 other VCs Yeah, and so the full circle story for me on this is John Resnick, who's one of the founders of Geodesic, along with John Roos and Matt Fuller, was part of Kauffman Fellows as well. And so I got to meet him. He was also living in the Bay Area. We sort of met in a more casual fashion and kept in touch for a number of years before ultimately I joined Geodesic. But I never would have thought that this confluence of Kauffman Fellows or U.S. Japan Council and all of these different interests that I've had sort of culminated in me joining Geodesic last year.
Yeah, yeah, nice. It's amazing how things work like that. But sounds like preparation met opportunity, and here you are at Geodesic. In my earlier podcast with Tom, your partner there at the Alliance Fund, we kind of did a deep dive into the Alliance Fund and the strategy and all of that. But just as a refresher, and for people who may not have seen that podcast, before we talk about the individual portfolio companies, do you want to just maybe give us a quick refresher about what the Alliance Fund is all about and what the strategy is, et cetera?
Definitely. So, here at the Alliance Fund, we're really focused on early stage investments in both deep tech and dual use companies. And so early stage for us is Series A, Series B, really spanning seed, Series A, Series B, and then deep tech. So things like AI, space, robotics, and then dual use, so things that have both commercial and national security or government use cases as well. And the other aspect of this is you layer on the focus of Geodesic and the Geodesic platform as a whole, and it really is to invest in these companies that are focused on the alliance, and so building that bridge between the U.S. and Japan. And as you know, Marcus, better than I do, like those areas of deep tech that we're focused on investing in are also very core focus areas to Japan as well.
And I believe the first company that you guys invested in was Mueon, right? I remember being surprised that you guys were announcing your first investment so quickly, actually, after we launched.
Maybe it's helpful to take a step back just and share for a brief moment kind of the way we at Alliance Fund at least think about early stage investing, and especially in these deep tech categories. And so for us, really, we're looking at, always backing amazing and incredible founders, but looking at where new and novel technologies are coming about, or these technologies that are enabling sort of fundamentally different business models that sort of shake up an industry. And so with that preamble, Mueon is that first investment that we made. It is in the semiconductor and data center space. And this is one where, the domain expertise of the founder is 10 out of 10. But then also they were doing something really interesting, which was rethinking data center architecture. And as you know, with all of this wave in AI, the thing that has to power it is all the data center infrastructure underneath. And so Mueon is really reinventing the data center architecture that's optimized for sort of tomorrow's AI workloads.
Definitely a huge area of focus right now. Although I don't think very many people are actually stopping to rethink the fundamental architecture. They're just kind of building. But obviously running into a lot of issues there, just as far as power and chip availability, et cetera, et cetera. So you mentioned challenges or opportunities of early stage investing. And that's a really interesting one, especially for our audience, I think, because a lot of our audience are kind of LPs of our existing growth stage funds. And growth stage investing and what you guys are doing at the Alliance Fund with the early stage, obviously like super different. So it's been interesting to see you guys operate that way. And do you guys have a board seat at Mueon?
We have a board observer seat. And so the Alliance Fund is really focused on, taking significant positions in these early stage companies. And so in cases where it makes sense for our fund size and check size, try to lead or co-lead the rounds that we invest in, or if not, just be a major participant in the round as well. But yeah, we're really focused on building a portfolio where we can be on the board or be very involved with the company, and help them get into Japan through Geodesic, but also just help them as board members. So help them with strategy, help them with their business, help them hire, and all the things that good board members do.
Got it. Yeah, that's super interesting. And then the next investment was VATN, I believe.
Yeah, so VATN or VATN is our second investment in the portfolio, and I think the way that we'll talk about VATN, GridAero, Portal Space, and some of these others that I'm sure we'll mention in the future is for those companies, we really thought hard about what are the various technology capabilities that are missing, both on the commercial. This is where the dual use piece comes in. So both on the commercial side, but then also on the government and defense and national security side. And we looked for companies that were sort of filling those gaps in both land, sea, air, and across the different domains. And so VATN is a really good example of building autonomous underwater vehicles that are very capable and then also low cost to produce and can be mass manufactured. And then we have a similar thesis around companies like GridAero, Firestorm, and then Portal Space as well in different domains of land or sea or even space. They're based out of Rhode Island, which maybe you wouldn't necessarily think of as a hub for startups, but when it comes to maritime companies, it's actually built. Rhode Island has really built a central hub for maritime and sort of blue economy companies like VATN. And so VATN is an underwater autonomous vehicle. Their whole goal is to mass produce very low cost but high performant underwater vehicles to do everything from sensing to swarming and a whole bunch of capabilities that are both used for commercial and government use cases.
And I don't know if they were expecting this at all, but obviously super relevant given what's going on in the Middle East today. Should we move on to GridAero?
So GridAero is one of our companies that we co-led the Series A of. We get to work with that founder and that team as members of the board. And that company is building really in the contested logistics space. And so they're building low-cost autonomous aircraft that can carry thousands of pounds of payload, thousands of miles for B2B logistics. And so if you think about that, again, great dual use, both commercial and government use cases, but specs-wise, it's actually perfect for the Indo-Pacific. So you think about areas like Hawaii to Japan to other islands in the Pacific Islands, and the GridAero network that they're building is really a perfect fit for that ecosystem.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, at Geodesic, we were investors in autonomous driving truck company, Aurora. They IPO'd and we exited back in 2021. But if you can have autonomous trucks driving down the freeway, why can't you have autonomous planes delivering cargo, over the ocean? Incredible idea, but totally makes sense. And then the next one, SMAC, I believe.
So SMAC Technologies is another really interesting company that we got the chance to co-lead the Series A of alongside Costanoa, who, if you remember the picture of me and the Kepler team, it's with the same Costanoa team that we're getting to invest with again.
Very cool.
And so SMAC is building at this intersection of AI and national security. And so they're really focused on building AI models and what they call decision dominance. So how do you optimize a decision using AI for the government? And that company is that's one where it's not only as you know with everything going on geopolitically, also the technology waves of AI, but then you couple that with deep domain expertise of the founders, the CEO, former Marine, worked at Palantir, and then was in the Marines with his co-founder as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have this incredible sort of overlap of right market, right technology, and then right founding team. And then that's SMAC is an example of a company that fits all of those boxes for us.
Yeah, and all of the kind of frontier models out there, these general AI companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, of course, they are getting a lot of the attention. But then in vertical AI, this kind of deep expertise, deep domain experience, obviously seems to be the common thread between these different companies that we're looking at. And it totally makes sense that defense would be one of those, verticals where AI, just absolutely has to be deployed. But also makes sense that you're going to want that to be built by people who are actually operators, who understand, the environment that the technology needs to work in, as well as the very specific types of use cases, for decision making that happen in an incredibly kind of unpredictable and chaotic environment. So that's another one that we think is super interesting, obviously, and it was really interesting to hear Andy talk about kind of the vision of the company at Geodesic Forum earlier this year. So Rafe, I think the next portfolio company that you guys invested in was Phenix Tailings.
So Phenix Tailings is one of the companies that we invested in that's really focused around this theme of building resilient supply chains and really building domestic resilient supply chains. And so they're one of the companies that's focused on building a supply chain focused around rare metals and critical minerals, all domestically here in the U.S.
Super interesting company, a little bit different from some of the other companies that you guys have invested in, I think. But right now, I think every link of the supply chain is being reimagined right now. And so it makes sense that we would need to go to the very beginning, right? Pulling rare earths out of the earth. And rare earths actually is kind of a misnomer, right? Like these minerals actually aren't rare. They're actually quite abundant. But of course, the challenges, as we all know, are in the refinement and the processing. And that's where the United States, I think, has fallen behind. And it's really good to see a company like Phenix Tailings kind of tackle that problem and bring that back to the U.S.
Definitely. And Phenix Tailings is one that we'll talk about this general theme, but they're one that's very tied into Japan already today.
Yes.
So there's a number of investors that are Japanese, both corporates or large Japanese organizations that have also invested, or VC funds that have also invested in Phenix Tailings. So we feel like it's one that would be a really good fit and overlap for the Alliance Fund, where we can be helpful also in sort of this expansion between the US and Japan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Japan is a manufacturing based economy. They make stuff. And so having access to raw materials is super critical for them. So that all makes total sense.
So yeah, Firestorm is another really interesting company that we got the chance to invest in the Series B of, work with Dan and the executive team over there. And Firestorm is sort of in this broader theme of building resilient supply chains. And they're focused on building manufacturing sort of edge nodes. And so the ability to deploy what they call an X-cell, which has a 3D printer and other manufacturing capabilities, put that into an X-cell or into a sort of a box, think of like a shipping container, and then deploy that on site at the edge. Either think about like a operation or a battlefield where you need rapid production of drones, or you need rapid production of things like manufacturing parts. And Firestorm has that capability and is building that capability today.
Yeah, and I had the opportunity to meet with the founder and CEO Dan when he was here in Japan. So definitely enjoyed that conversation. Super exciting company. What is kind of the secret sauce, I guess, that they bring?
Yeah, I would say it's in sort of the broader product, which both includes the hardware and the software, but it's also in sort of the integration of everything together. And so, I mean, I think the best way to explain it to me is I don't know if you've ever had a 3D printer, Marcus, at home.
I haven't. I have
as a
not.
hobbyist, but so I have a couple of them, and you always have to tinker with, making sure the bed is level, or making sure that you have enough filament, or that the 3D printer doesn't break throughout one of its runs. And think about trying to deploy that type of additive manufacturing capability in a dirty, dusty, dangerous environment. And so there's a lot of integration components or system level things that go into making Firestorm sort of a ready to go out of the box product.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's not just what you're making, but it's how you're making it, how quickly you can make it, where you can make it. Like all of those things come into play, obviously with, government applications, but I'm sure there's, applications for that in industry as well. So just kind of an interesting angle, that they're taking to tackle that opportunity. So super interesting. Portal Space, I think, is the seventh.
So Portal Space is a company that we're really excited to invest in. We co-led the Series A of that company. And it's actually a founder that both Tom and myself knew for many, many years.
Okay.
And so when we joined forces with the Alliance Fund and had the opportunity to invest, we were really excited. But what Portal Space is doing is they're building next generation spacecraft with rapid mobility. So this may sound science fiction, but it's
like Star Wars.
It is reality today. But space is becoming more contested. It's becoming more congested, obviously, with the launch of more satellites, but also more contested, where instead of satellites up there being static objects that just sense or send information, the future of satellites in space is that you're going to have dynamic satellites that move from point A to point B, either for different mission sets where they want to sense or take images of a different region, or even for capabilities where they just need to maneuver around space debris or an adversarial satellite. And so Portal Space is building that next generation of spacecraft that can go and do that. And this is one where you couldn't find a better founder market fit in the CEO, Jeff. The CEO, Jeff Thornburg, he was one of the first early employees at SpaceX. He helped build the Raptor engine program, which many of the SpaceX rockets still use today, and then went on to do a number of other things, including starting Portal Space. And so it's one that we jumped at the chance to invest when we had the opportunity.
You said you used a term that I've never heard, adversarial satellite. But it makes sense that space is becoming such a contested place, and we're going to need technologies like that to navigate. You mentioned that you and Tom knew the founder, Jeff, or you've known him for a while. Did you know that he had started this company? How did you guys end up kind of reconnecting with him and ultimately end up making the investment?
Yeah, so I mean, this gets a little into early stage investing. Where, Jeff, we knew him when he started the company. I think Tom and I both met him respectively at our prior firms. And so much of early stage investing it really is the founder, and so you're investing so heavily in the founder and their ability to not only raise capital, but sell an early vision to early employees, to early adopters and early customers, and sort of build out what could be a legacy defining company. And so when we're investing and underwriting investments at the early stage, and I think the founder bet really is one of the key components of making an early stage investment decision.
Yeah, and obviously the founder bet is always a consideration, no matter what stage you're investing in, even for later stage investments like us. But in those situations where you are investing in a growth stage company, in addition to the founder, of course, you have the technology and there's competitive dynamics and there's go-to-market execution and sales growth and renewal rates and all these other kind of things that ultimately figure into the final decision. And you don't have any of those things with these really early stage, seed stage kind of companies. And so it really falls even more on who the founders are and their ability to execute. So
yeah, I think that's right. I mean, the founder plays a key role, and like you said, right there, these companies, they don't have a lot of commercial data or traction often to underwrite. Yeah, so I think for early stage investing, it really is about the strength of the founding team. Often cases the core IP and technology, especially in deep tech companies. Yeah. And then the last piece of this is, we're taking investment. We're investing in companies where we're often taking board seats, and then Geodesic and the Alliance Fund is trying to be an active participant in helping those companies grow. And so we're really trying to find companies that also fit areas that we can be helpful in at Geodesic.
And that's kind of a good segue into kind of this next segment of our discussion, which is kind of early stage investing. And we covered various parts of this, I think, throughout the conversation. My next question, I guess, though, is about what about markets? Because sometimes in later stage investing, you're always kind of looking at the TAM, right? And a lot of times that's well defined. If it's data or cybersecurity, it's very easy to kind of say, okay, this is a $10 billion existing market. But for early stage companies, sometimes you're building into an existing market, but sometimes you're not, right? Even the market may be kind of a little bit undefined. How do you think about that?
Good question.
If at all.
I think it's so on the market sizing piece. I think we still do the analysis of, is this a big market? But I think the question that we're trying to answer is, could this be a big market?
Yeah.
And so I'll give you going back to the example I said about Waymo, 10 years ago, right? And when I started, or 11 years ago, when I started venture in 2015, Waymo was not out of the garage at Google, right? Cruise had just started. And so they were still in testing mode. And now Waymo is, I think their stat was that they're doing 1 million rides a week. And so in 10 years, 10 years ago, you would have said, what's the market size for autonomous rideshare? And it would have been 0, right? But then I think for us, the exercise that we try to do at early stages, what is the market size? What can the market size be in 10 years? And then what has to go right? And what are sort of the if statements that have to go right in order for that market size to be realized?
I imagine there's a little bit of secret sauce that goes into those calculations. Like you said, there's a lot of ifs. You have to make certain assumptions, but nonetheless, a super important part of doing the due diligence, I suppose. Like with autonomous driving, the autonomous driving market might be 0, but people driving cars every day. There's a taxi market. So, what kind of assumptions do you make there? But I imagine there's a lot of thought that goes into those things.
Definitely. What I say, Marcus, on that too is this is also why, especially at the early stage, the founder is so important, because I think the founder in so many ways is defining what that market could be. And when they're building their company and telling the story to investors, potential employees or potential customers, they're really telling that story and narrative of what this market or what this space will look like over the next 10 years. And I think as board members or investors, it's our role to sort of question the assumptions and just stress test it, right? But the founders are the ones really driving what the future of certain technologies or markets will look like.
Yeah. And probably a lot of the founders don't even care, I would imagine. You know what I mean? Like to them, it's a future that they can see, but they're not consultants, right? They're not, Deloitte or McKinsey people where they're going to come in and try to come up with a precise formula to ascertain the exact size of the market and what percentage they're going to get. They just know that they have a vision and they have a technology and they believe in it and they're trying to bring to pass something that doesn't exist. So I guess as investors there has to be some level of discipline, but at the end of the day you really have to, it comes back again to the vision, to the founder and your confidence in his or her ability to execute. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, really, really interesting stuff. Next question. So we kind of went over the individual portfolio companies and obviously super interesting, covering a wide range of sectors. As far as the portfolio as a whole, though, Rafe, like how do you grade kind of the Alliance Fund so far, and how do you think about the portfolio overall, the construction? If you could just maybe share a few thoughts on that, where you guys are at now, and it's still early, right?
Yeah.
So where are you at this point, and how do you see things going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, we're early days at the Alliance Fund. It's it hasn't even been a year yet. We have 7 portfolio companies. We're going to have a multiple of those by the end of the Alliance Fund of this Fund 1. But I think the way that we're looking at is really being disciplined around early stage investments in this deep tech and dual use category. And so if you look across the board, there's a general theme, right? We're investing in high quality founders who are domain experts that often have unique technologies or very unique business models. And then we're finding the best teams in certain industries and sectors. And we're trying to build sort of this map or sort of network of companies across space and ground and sea, and then also across things like data centers or AI at the data center level up to the infrastructure and application level. And so I think how would I characterize Alliance Fund so far? I think we're off to a good start. I think it's incomplete, and we're going to continue to make good investments across all of these categories.
No, thanks. A lot of Japanese companies, including a lot of our LPs, they have their own CVCs now, and they're kind of grappling, I think, with the challenges of portfolio construction, right? Not only what individual investments to make, but how do you construct a portfolio, to ultimately produce, the best outcome. And so, just interesting to hear your thoughts about that, and definitely something that we want to follow up on, as the fund grows.
Definitely. I mean, the other thing I'd say on that point is, like in Silicon Valley or VC broadly in the US has gotten so much more competitive, even in the decade that I've been in it. Like the TAM, as we talk about, of venture in the US it's almost the order of magnitude larger, which means that there's so much more capital. The market is way more competitive. But the upside is that there are a lot of companies that are being formed now. And so one of the things I think about when we're investing in companies is also what's our right to win? And why should, either at the investor level, why should we have the right to invest in the company? At the fund level, why does the Alliance Fund have the right to lead or co-lead or participate in a company? And then at the Geodesic or firm level, like why is Geodesic the right partner for them? So I think on that right to win, I think Tom, myself, the Alliance Fund, and Geodesic, we often think about, me and Tom's relationships at the board level and the founder level. How do we build those and have the opportunity to invest and then work with them for the next decade. At the Alliance Fund, to your question of how we're building a portfolio, we're really trying to invest in companies that can not only be great companies, but can learn from each other as well.
Yeah.
And so we'll talk about this of companies going to forum together or being on events that we can co-host together. And then at the Geodesic level, like we really want to be helpful in bridging this US-Japan relationship. And so that's a lot of what you're doing in Tokyo with companies and a lot of what we're trying to do with our portfolio companies as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the Japan part is a big part of it. And personally, I've met, Andy from SMAC and Nick from Phenix Tailings, Dan from Firestorm, and Nelson from VATN. I met them all here in Tokyo. So I know that's a big part of it. And that's super exciting that this kind of platform that we've built as Geodesic, to be this bridge between the US and Japan, and to see that functioning with the Alliance Fund is super gratifying. But I also do know that, you and Suzanne and Tom also bring kind of significant know-how and value add to the table, even independent of Japan, right? You're talking about how do you work with, brand new startup companies, and give them advice on hiring and all of these other, really critical issues that, they need to overcome as they grow the company. So I think it's a really good balance that you guys have of that kind of personal experience just in, early stage startups. You and Tom obviously have, served on boards and just been super experienced in investing in the greatest, a lot of the greatest deep tech companies to, to be established over the past few decades. And so, that plus the Japan thing, I feel like is really a great combination. It seems to me like when you say deep tech, there's a spectrum, right, of how deep, right? Like there's really, really deep tech stuff that's maybe either really early or, going after, trying to solve technical problems that are so difficult that, it's really unclear kind of where or when they're actually going to come to fruition. But then on the other end, it seems like there's a lot of deep tech industries in general are much closer to kind of solving problems that exist like here and now. Just asking like kind of where are we with deep tech as an industry, and where do you see things going from here on out?
Yeah, it's a good question or good thought. I mean, for me, I think it's still very early in sort of the life cycle of deep tech. I agree with everything that you said around, the increase in technology capabilities, the increase in adoption from commercial and government, sort of the market size overall growing. The one thing I'd also add is, as investors, we're also following where talent goes. And I'd say that there's this huge influx of people who want to work, very smart people who want to work on very difficult problems now. And you're seeing these really smart people graduate college and then go and work at these very hard to solve problems in what we call deep tech companies in space and robotics and energy. And so I think that's what's also really exciting. And then what I predict, right, is over the next decade, over the course of this Alliance Fund, you're going to see the maturing of this asset class of deep tech overall. And so I think, like we mentioned a couple of times this year, SpaceX is going public. That'll be a huge bellwether moment. It'll be the largest IPO in history, right? And I think we'll look back in 10 years, we'll have this podcast, and then we'll see all of the companies that followed and have gone public since. And then we're not going to be really asking, hey, what's the market size of this space economy or the space ecosystem anymore, because it will be clearly well defined. And we're going to be on to the next thing in 10 years. So that's where I see the future of deep tech going.
I mean, it's super interesting. In the beginning, even of like, if you look at IT, right, the early iterations and the disruption cycles were very long, right? But over time, those cycles have really contracted, and now it's like, every month, companies are getting disrupted. And so I think what we're seeing now, we're seeing a lot of the obvious, maybe not so obvious to everyone, but to the people involved, like the obvious kind of opportunities out there. But who knows what we're going to be doing in 5 to 10 years? Probably a lot of things that people haven't even imagined. So I can't reiterate enough how important like the Japan component is, because Japan is a manufacturing-based economy. They need rare earths, for example, and because geopolitically they're so strategically positioned and they're such an important ally for us. And so kind of adding on to what Geodesic was founded on based on software and now having the DeepTech component is just incredible part of our platform and, super exciting to be a part of. Thanks for spending time with us today, Rafe. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for the time and for giving me the opportunity to share more about the Alliance Fund.
Thanks, Rafe.